Welcome back to Lesson 8D, our very last lesson in the entire course, creating a winning proposal, putting it all together on paper or online. Or you can also think about this as everything else that Marin absolutely positively wants me to know about crafting an A-plus grant proposal while we're still together inside the Ultimate Grant Proposal Blueprint course. So the first thing I want to cover with you is the form and format that your proposal can take depending on the guidelines of the specific funder, the types and styles of proposal packages. And these aren't hard and fast rules. I'm going to give you phrases that describe the form and format and then a few pointers within each of those types or styles to help guide your thinking. But I want to let you know that these are very, very fluid. And again, these are just broad categorizations that will be very specific to any one funder's own particular guidelines. The first one is one we've already had a taste of with our Ben & Jerry's Foundation guidelines, and that's the letter proposal. Remember, they asked for a one-page letter as a letter of inquiry together with a cover sheet, and in that one page they told you exactly what they wanted you to include, which lined up very nicely with what we've already practiced working on in our one-page Magic Wand worksheet. So that's what a letter proposal is. It is a proposal in one page inside the frame of a traditional letter form. It'll be on letterhead. It'll include an inside address, the salutation, Dear Ms. XYZ. The body of the letter is going to be your proposal, and it won't differ in any degree from a one-page proposal. You're going to have the sign-off and the signature, and boom, you're done. So again, the letter proposal simply means you're using the traditional letter style as the frame, and the body of the letter itself becomes the proposal according to the same exact guidelines that we've been talking about all the way through. A form proposal is pretty much what it says, that there's a literal or virtual fill in the blanks that the funder has given you. So the question is pre-printed, it's very specific. The space for you to reply to the question is right there in front of you. It's very specific. You may literally need to fill in the blanks on an actual form. This can be very challenging because the technological sophistication of grant makers and grant making organization is all over the map. I know there are still grant makers out there who have hard copy application forms, and you have to figure out how to get your information onto a hard copy form. So a fill in the blanks form can also be an online form, and we're going to be talking about online proposals separately in just a couple of minutes. But again, the idea here is that you're given the very specific language that you're going to be responding to. You're given the space for that response to fall in. Everything must be in the specific order that in which is presented to you. That's exactly what they want presented back. Okay. A guided proposal is the term that I came up with, where you are given some guidelines, you're told what questions you are being asked to answer, but it's in a very fluid way, and you essentially are being told, in your narrative of no more than 4 pages, double-spaced, answer the following questions, and then you can actually weave those questions into your response. In other words, they're not being very prescriptive about exactly answering this specific question in this specific place. An open format proposal is what would have driven you crazy before you took this course. This is where the funder simply says, again, in no more than 2 pages, double-spaced, tell us everything you think we need to know about your proposal. Before this course, you would have gone, I have no idea how to do that. And now you're going to say, that's fabulous. That's the best of all possible opportunities. I've already got my well dug. I already have my Ultimate Grant Proposal Blueprint. Thank you, thank you, thank you, because all I have to do is pull straight from my Ultimate Grant Proposal Blueprint, put it down into my, condense it down into my 2 pages, boom. In other words, you're letting the funder is letting you choose the format, choose the structure, choose the order of presentation, and now you know exactly how to do that. Isn't that wonderful? So the same information that we've been working on all the way through our Ultimate Grant Proposal Blueprint absolutely serves each and every one of these forms. Absolutely. It's just that in the letter proposal, your format's going to be in the shape of a letter, same information. I would want you to use bullets. I would want you to use numbered lists. I would want you to use side headings in a letter. You're going to be thinking about the 12-12-12 reviewer when you're making those formatting decisions. In a form proposal, you may not have those options in terms of formatting, but be thoughtful about your line breaks, your paragraph breaks. Be thoughtful about how much text you glomp together into a single paragraph without breaking it out into individual, 2 or 3 word paragraphs or bulleted lists and so on and so forth. The same is true, obviously, for a guided proposal and an open format proposal as well. So the characteristics and qualities of good proposal formatting absolutely apply no matter what type and style you're working with. It's just going to be a little more flexible and fluid. The last one isn't really a type or style, it's a combination proposal, and that simply means that there are elements of 2 or more of these other types or styles. You may have a cover sheet, for instance, like the Ben & Jerry's Foundation, which is more a fill-in-the-blanks form, and that becomes attached to a letter. So it's a combination of a letter proposal and a form proposal. Or you might have a series of questions on a form that you're going to be answering, and then they're asking you, in addition to this, in 2 pages or less, tell us everything else you think we need to know about your proposal. So that would be a combination of a form and an open format. Again, don't stress about the specific language. My intention here is just to simply give you some ways of thinking about navigating through the variety of approaches that funders will offer to you that you need to be responding to. So let's spend a few minutes talking about that special category of proposals, that is those that are submitted online. It's not just a difference in how they're submitted, it's also a difference in how they're structured, how they're formatted, and there are a few quirks that we need to be aware of along the way. The first thing I want you to know is that online proposals, like proposals in the on-paper or hard copy form, come in all shapes, all sizes, and all formats. So there isn't anything I can tell you that will apply to all online submissions, but what I can do is give you a few guidelines to help you navigate through the various options, choices, and strategies that you're going to be faced with as you're working with online submissions. And online proposals also come, by the way, in a whole variety, the entire spectrum of technological sophistication, from the very sort of primitive and rudimentary to really elaborate processes that just really represent a whole-scale commitment on the part of the grant maker to embracing technology as its primary platform for proposal submission and management. A couple of really important tips for making the process work for you. One of the quirks of an online application process is that many times you move from one screen to the next to the next. So you may have a question on one screen, and not until you actually put something in the response box for that question will you be allowed to move to the next. What this means is that unless you're very thoughtful, it can be very difficult for you to see the entire application laid out before you actually start putting words down in response to the application. You need to have that big picture. So create dummy text, just a couple of words, if that's all it takes, so that you can plug those couple of words into screen 1 and be allowed to move to screen 2 and then be allowed to move to screen 3, etc., etc., etc. Just don't hit the submit button at the end. You don't want that dummy text going anywhere. And as you move from screen to screen, and this is true whether it's all on one long screen or whether you're moving from screen to screen, what you need to be doing is capturing what that screen says and putting that information in a separate document, a Word document. So the specific questions that are being asked, any guidance that you're given about answering those questions, including the character counts or word counts that you have available to respond to that question. So what you're actually doing, if you will, is constructing a hard copy version of the entire online application. And I'm sorry, it's meant to be easier for us, but it isn't at that level because we need to see the whole thing before we can actually engage with it meaningfully. The second most important hint that will save you endless hours of frustration, tears, and hair pulling is to do your work offline. That simply means don't compose your responses on the online screen. Create a Word document that replicates the application on the online screen and do all of your composing work in that Word document and save it often. Why? Because any number of things can happen if you're working online to crash the system, to crash the screen, to crash the program, to shut down your computer, to lose the work that you've just spent minutes, many minutes, maybe even hours laboring to compose so perfectly. Do all that work separately in an offline document that you can save and edit and save and edit, and you will absolutely save yourself tragedy, to put it lightly. In that offline document, you can also do your word and character counts. You can do all your final editing. You can do some degree of formatting. Formatting is usually pretty limited in an online application, but you can test out your formatting options and you can make your formatting choices in the offline document. Preparatory to actually pulling it from your Word doc and putting it into the online form. All right. Character counts, word counts. There are almost always limits to the number of characters and words that you can include in your responses in an online form. Be really careful that you understand what's being counted, and this takes some testing sometimes. I know some online forms that will count paragraph spaces as characters. They will count special characters twice in some cases, those kinds of things. So, nobody's probably going to throw your proposal out if you run over the character count or if the second half of the last word is cut off because you ran over a little bit, but just be mindful of that. And just like we don't want to push up against the deadline, we also try your very best not to push right up against the character limit. Give yourself a little bit of latitude. Formatting, as I mentioned, can be a real challenge. A lot of times we don't have options that we normally would use to help our 12-12-12 reviewer make her way through our proposal without falling asleep by the end of page 2. So generally in a hard copy proposal, we would use headings and side headings. We would use bullets. We would use numbered lists, all those great things to create signposts for our reader. Our options can be limited online, and we may simply need to use caps to indicate headlines, if you will. And then be really, really careful not to use language that is too dense and not to use long, long sentences. If our reader is having to work against troublesome formatting, we don't want the reader to have to be struggling with highly technical language or very lengthy sentences at the same time. All right, we'll talk more about those factors a little bit later on when we talk about the actual writing. The last point about online proposals is disaster can happen if we wait until just before the deadline to push that submit button. So when you've got everything pulled together and it's all ready to go, make sure it's ready to go at least an hour before the deadline. So many things can happen with the system. I've known more than one case where an entire system crashed because so many people were trying to submit their proposals all at the same time. So don't let that happen. Don't push the deadline. Give yourself plenty of latitude to get the proposal in well ahead of time, and that will also give you an opportunity to get confirmation back. Most of the time, there's a message that you receive back confirming that your proposal was not only submitted but received, and that's what you'll be looking for. There's a lot more that we could cover in terms of online proposals. It'd be a great subject for an entire course all in and of itself, wouldn't it? But I hope these are guidelines that will give you some clarity and save your sanity as well as you're moving through. I want to share a little bit of information with you about appendices and attachments. All right, these are the other things that go along with your proposal narrative. A few things to think about, and then we'll look at some typical examples. Number one, more is not better. You do not have license to attach your entire file cabinet, virtual or otherwise. Be really judicious and make sure that you send everything that the funder asks for. And don't send anything else that isn't absolutely necessary. All right. It's very rare that there's anything else. I shouldn't say that. There may be occasions when there's something else the funder didn't ask for that you think should be sent as part of the package. Sometimes a funder will say, do not send anything that is not on this list. And then what do? Simple. You do not send anything that is not on the list. Sometimes they'll say, send these things and anything else you think will help us understand your organization, your work, etc., etc., etc. That is not an invitation to send your whole filing cabinet. Be judicious. Anything that is critical to the review process needs to be in the narrative, not as an attachment. Because many, many times the program officer, that would be me in my position, gets the whole package with all of the attachments, but all the review team sees is the narrative and the budget. They don't need to see all the certifications and the documentations of this, that, and everything else. I need to have that as part of the record. I need to have that as part of my file. But my review team doesn't need to see that as part of their review process. That has to do with attachments itself. So don't ever say something in the narrative for further information on this, see attachment B, because if it's necessary to get points in the narrative, it needs to be in the narrative, not referenced in an attachment. Alternative format items are a real problem for grant makers. Please do not include them unless you know for sure that they will be welcome. This includes photos, tapes, CDs, anything else that is not paper when we're talking about an online proposal. A hard copy proposal. Attachments and appendices for an online application are handled separately. Typically, you upload a PDF document or you upload your hard copy documents in digital form to go forward. You don't want to be uploading photos or CDs or recordings of things, again, unless the funder specifically invites you to do that. Okay, so a few things to keep in mind, and let's take a look at some of the things that are commonly asked for, and that means that these are things you should have on hand. You need to have current copies of all of these documents right there in a drawer in your desk or on your computer. You can pull them up without even having to go check with anybody else because you know they're commonly going to be part of your proposal submissions. Letters of commitment or participation from your partners, a board of directors list. A lot of times it's not just the names, but their community affiliations. The resumes of key personnel are often requested by funders. You're going to want to have copies of your organization's overall budget, your annual reports, audited financial statements, something that a lot of funders will ask for. A lot of funders will ask for your list of donors. Okay, and many, if not most, will ask for your IRS 501c3 letter of determination. Okay, that's the letter that your nonprofit got from the IRS that demonstrates that you are organized as a 501c3 and that donations to you are tax deductible. Anything else that is really important and relevant about your organization that you know funders are likely to ask for, again, keep those updated documents on hand and save yourself the trouble of having to go search them out every time you're putting a proposal together. I hope that's helpful for you. Just a little bit of a word about putting the documentation together in your proposal. And here's a helpful hint that a lot of people never think to do. Questions. Questions for me? No. Questions about the proposal process. Questions about what you're being asked to present. Questions about what needs to go into the proposal. Questions about attachments. Anything like this. If you have questions, how do you get the information you need? If you can, get in touch. Get in touch with the contact person for that funding process. A quick email, a quick phone call can get you the information and save you from going astray because you second guessed. It's not always possible to get in touch with a staff person. I know that it's frustrating, but many funders are actually really small, say family organizations or family foundations who don't have dedicated staff. But if you can, it's always worth a try. So let's turn our attention to the writing. Now, all the way through, the entire course, we've been talking about qualities of good writing. There's been a lot that I've shared with you about our language choices to really bring our proposals to life. But I want to focus just on that right here and right now because it's such a critical element of how our proposal comes across to the other side. And I want to share the golden rule of good writing. If you forget everything else about good writing in the context that we're talking about here, this is the one thing for you to remember. The golden rule of good writing. Write as you would be written unto. Everything that works for you when you're reading will work for the person reading your proposal. Everything that gets in the way for you when you're reading will get in the way for the person reading the proposal. It's just as simple as that. You can always ask the question if you are trying to decide whether to do this or that, go this way or that way. Ask yourself the question, what would that do for me if I were the reader? How would that land for me if I were the reader? What would work for me if I were the reader, especially if I were the reader under the 12-12-12 scenario circumstance? So with that in mind, I want to share 10 keys to effective writing. It was a dark and stormy night. Good old Snoopy. 10 keys to effective writing. Some of these will be familiar because we touched on them before, but again, I'm pulling them all together for you here in one place. Number one, keep sentences short. Right? This means somewhere between between 2 and 30 words, averaging about 17. What's that all about? That is all about mental energy. Everything around our keys to effective writing has something to do with the mental energy of the reader. And after about 17 words in a sentence, the reader will start to skip ahead, looking for that next sentence break. And key information, if the sentence is long and windy, key information is easily going to get overlooked or lost entirely. So sentences averaging about 17 words are perfect, but we get variety on either side of that. We just want to be topping out at about 30, not much more than that. All right, and good short declarative sentences are really, really powerful when we use them with thought throughout our proposal. What else? Use simpler, more familiar language. I love this. This is not saying dumb it down. This is saying eschew. Eschew, another word for avoid, or don't use jargon. Don't use multisyllabic language. This is not an opportunity to trot out all the vocabulary building that you studied so hard in sophomore English class. This is about being mindful again of the mental energy that your reader has to bring to the reading process. And short sentences and simpler, more familiar language mean more transparency in our writing, so that the reader is using a lot less energy trying to get through the package and has a lot more energy available to actually bring forth, process, think about, and absorb the information that we want to be sharing through those sentences and through those language choices. Right, so something to think about there. More familiar language, not simplistic, not childish. If there are two words that mean exactly the same thing, but one is simpler and one is more complex, choose the simpler one. Remember our example of functional illiteracy? I come back to that again and again and again. It's so easy to misunderstand or miscommunicate what functional illiteracy means. And worse than that, it jumbles up the reader. And worse than that, it creates that us versus them way of thinking. That's not language that's familiar to me, so I'm not one of them. Use the simpler, more familiar language. Prune, prune, prune. That just means keep cutting, keep trimming, keep moving all unessential language out. This is not an invitation to slash and burn. We're not looking for very choppy or brusque or abrupt language to end up with. We just are taking out everything that doesn't absolutely pull its own weight in terms of moving the sentence forward. Prune, 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 prune. Get to the point. I want every single paragraph to start with a topic sentence. Remember topic sentences? We learned about those in composition class in high school. I don't want you to wait to the end of the paragraph to tell me what that paragraph was about or to tell me what you want me to know from that paragraph. I actually want to be able to scan the first sentence in every paragraph throughout the entire proposal and finish with a good idea what that proposal was all about. Okay, so get to the point. We know we do that because we include the summary right at the very top of our proposal. That's called getting to the point. Use concrete, energetic, and vivid language. Does this sound like the theater of the mind? Well, the next one will as well. Creating vivid mental pictures. And how about this next one too? Keep people on center stage. All of these are key reminders that we are wanting to activate the imagination resource of our reader. And we do that by creating words that move and that make pictures and that bring people into play so we can actually see real people doing real things in real ways. All right, the theater of the mind gives me something really powerful to relate to and follow through. Certainly keeps me from falling asleep before the end of page 2. Use variety in your language. All right. Variety simply means mix it up a little bit. Use short sentences and longer sentences. Use short words and a little bit longer words. It doesn't mean pull out your thesaurus and find a different way of saying every single thing. It simply means, feel free to bring some coloration and some shading into your language as well, but not at the expense of clarity. And that's the key thing here. Clarity trumps everything. People ask me sometimes, they say, I'm a really creative writer. How do I bring my creativity into my proposal writing? And I basically say, well, forget everything you think you know about creative writing and focus on clarity. Bring your creativity in service of clarity. Point number 9, it goes right back to that mental energy. Just understand that the reader is going to come to the process of reading your proposal with a limited amount of mental energy. And the more energy they have to use decoding your language, the less they're going to have to actually process the information and the ideas that you want to share. They will have to work too hard to get to the really important stuff. So let's be really respectful of that mental energy, not only because it's thoughtful of the reader, but because it also serves us better as the ones who want to be communicating. Number 10, the bottom line. I absolutely love this. Write to express, not to impress. Write to express, not to impress. Your writing should be transparent. That is, your writing should help the beauty and the strength and the power of your proposal to shine through purely, clearly, compellingly. Nothing should stand between the reader and the great ideas you want to communicate. Nothing should stand between the reader and the great ideas you want to communicate. So with that in mind, just for fun, I thought I'd share something with you that I call the Systematic Proposal Buzz Phrase Synthesizer. And this literally is just for fun. If you are ever at a loss for words, and my tongue is firmly in my cheek as I say this, and you want to pull a phrase together that is sure to completely bamboozle anybody who's reading your proposal, just turn to your Systematic Proposal Buzz Phrase Synthesizer. Pick 3 digits between 0 and 9 and pull from column 1, column 2, and column 3 your magic buzz phrase synthesizer phrase. So how does that work? Suppose you choose 0, 4, and 5. All right, column 1, 0, integrated. Column 2, 4, collaborative. Column 3, 5, intervention. Oh, look at that. We just created an integrated, collaborative intervention. Does it mean anything? Absolutely nothing. Does it communicate anything? Absolutely nothing. Is this just for fun? Yes, it absolutely is. So have a good time with this. I've got space on the bottom of page 188 for you to come up with your own favorites. Just play around with it a little bit. And it's another backwards way of saying don't ever use any of these words. And certainly don't ever use 3 of these words in a row. So I want to wrap up with this list of 8 qualities of exemplary proposals that you find on page 189. Now, what I love about this list of 8 qualities is that it isn't written specifically for grant writers. This is not aspirational for grant writers. This is written in a publication for grant makers. And it's intended to share with grant makers the qualities that they can be looking for in the proposals that they choose to fund. And I want you to read through all 8 of them on your own, but I want to share together with you quality number 1, the quality that was chosen as the most important characteristic of exemplary proposals. Are you ready for this one? I get goosebumps every time I read this. Here we go. The proposal bristles with enthusiasm, urgency, passion. It suggests a group of people who can barely contain their eagerness to begin working. As a reader, you find yourself inspired and excited by their plans. The proposal bristles with enthusiasm, urgency, passion. It suggests a group of people who can barely contain their eagerness to begin working. And as a reader, you find yourself inspired and excited by their plans. Doesn't that just encapsulate everything we've been talking about in this section? Absolutely everything in terms of focusing on what can we share that will activate the excitement, the enthusiasm, the urgency, the passion in the heart of the reviewer, the heart of the person that we're inviting to enter into the world that as we're describing it and help us create meaningful change in that community. You find yourself inspired and excited by their plans. You can't wait to get to that review team meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock and be the champion for this proposal, right? Oh, well, guys, that brings us to the end of our material for Chapter 8, which is our final chapter in the Ultimate Grant Proposal Blueprint session. So let's take a quick look back at where we've been in this chapter. In Lesson A, we busted the myth of the A+ proposal by taking a peek inside the black box and seeing how final grant decisions are really, really made. Remember that? That seems like a long time ago. This is an example of what happens inside the black box, where I said, in the end, when you get into the finals, the points no longer matter. Woo, that was shocking. In Lesson B, we dived more deeply into the inner world of the grant maker with the reality check of what actually is going on in the review process inside the grant maker's mind. And we took a look at what are some of the things that we're up against inside that black box that we can't do anything about except relax. And in Lesson C, so what's an RFP again? Making sense of the grant maker's guidelines. Here we got really tactical in terms of taking a look at some strategies to help us navigate through all of the detail that we need to be collecting and accumulating and assimilating and working with when we're diving into the guidelines from any given funder, Funder A, Funder B, Funder X, Y, Z. And we took a closer look at guidelines from the Ben and Jerry's Foundation, as well as from the Common Grant application for the National Network of Grant Makers. Okay, so here was my definition of the winning proposal. Do you remember that? It's in on deadline, cross the T's and dot the I's. It clearly represents the front end of a well thought out business plan. And what's that final one, the one that makes all the difference? It's clear how supporting this proposal will also further the philanthropic mission of the grant maker. And then I shared an important hint for maintaining your sanity. Do you remember this one? This was all about creating that critical information sheet to help capture the mission critical and last minute details for your RFP or funding opportunity. All right, my little gift to you. And then finally in Lesson D, we really took a deeper dive into some of the ins and outs of pulling it all together on paper or online. And we specifically looked at some of the ins and outs of the online application process. But what really came through for me in Lesson D was the golden rule of good writing, which again is write as you would be written unto. Really says it all. It's what I want you to carry forward more than almost anything else in this entire session. The bottom line of putting it all together on paper or online is that we are writing to express, not to impress. We're not concerned with impressing anybody with how much we know or how unlimited our vocabulary is, but we're wanting to express the power and the beauty and the importance of the ideas, of the plans, of the projects that we're inviting our funders to partner with us in undertaking. And then we wrapped up by sharing the 8 qualities of exemplary proposals with the focus on number 1, the proposal bristles with enthusiasm, urgency, and passion. It suggests a group of people who can barely contain their eagerness to begin working. So as always, let's end this session by circling back to the questions that we looked at the very beginning and see how you would answer them now at the end of the chapter. Number one, I hope you were paying attention. If an organization is struggling in its grant seeking, it's not always the fault of the grant writer. True or false? Well, you've seen this question come up every single session, but this time I put that little twist to it. I changed the language to see if you were awake, and the answer to this question is true. It's not always the fault of the grant writer. The grant writer, as a grant writer, you are a key critical team member. There are so many other roles that other stakeholders in the organization have to play to contribute to the success and the health of the organization's grant seeking. How about this one? An A+ proposal will beat out a B- proposal every time. Whoa, that was the myth of the black box, wasn't it? The myth of the A+ proposal and the black box. That was a rock'em shock'em to actually pull back the screen and see what happens inside that black box and take a look at why a proposal that goes into the finals round as an A+ proposal can come out unfunded, whereas a proposal that goes into the finals round as a B- proposal can come out awarded. How about this one? When you've seen one grant maker, you've seen them all. How did you answer that? I hope you answered that one false. We now know for sure when you've seen one grant maker, you've seen one grant maker. All kinds of shapes and sizes, great diversity in terms of focus, in terms of programmatic interests, and certainly in terms of culture, values, perspective, and personality as well. Proposals that win grant dollars are those that make it easy for funders to say yes and hard to say no. True or false? Again, I gave this one a little twist. You're probably all used to all the answers being false, but in this case, the answer is true. That is absolutely true. We talked quite a lot about what makes that so, not only in this session, but all the way through the course. When putting your proposal together, it's a good idea to imagine that the reviewers reading it are doing so under the best of all possible circumstances. True or false? This is our 12-12-12 scenario, right? And the answer is false. It's the exact opposite. It really helps if we think about the worst of all possible circumstances, very limited mental energy, and ask ourselves the question, with very limited mental energy, what do I need to do in my proposal to help my reviewer fall in love and not fall asleep? Okay, how about this one? When working on an online proposal, it's a good idea to do your work directly in the online form to make sure you answer all the questions within the allowed word limits. True or false? Absolutely false. You go crazy if you try doing that. As we said before, we want to pull our information out and do our composing in an offline document and then pull it forward into the online form so we don't risk it getting lost through any number of ways that things that you're doing online can go astray or get lost. All right. So moving from the tactical, this was a very tactical session in a lot of ways. Moving from the tactical back into our expanded 3D perspective. We're wrapping up a long journey that we've taken together, whether it's been over 8 weeks or 16 weeks, or whether you've spread this out over longer because of your own unique schedule. I recognize, and I affirmed at the very beginning, that it was a real journey, that it was a huge commitment on your part, huge commitment on my part to pull this all together and share it with you, and how much I value and honor you for being here every single step of the way. And again, I don't know your specific circumstances. I don't know your organization. I don't know your community. I hope I know your heart. And I hope that you really found deep support through this journey. I hope that there was something, more than one something, that really uplifted you and inspired you, that helped you see not only your work in the grants world, but your world as a whole in a new way, maybe with new eyes. Now, I want to just take a few minutes here at the end to invite you into some ending reflection, just as we opened up in our very first lesson of our very first session with some opening reflection. As I shared the deep paradigms that we were going to be working inside, I want to just open the opportunity to look back very briefly, maybe not so briefly, over the journey that you've just completed, going right back to the very beginning when I shared with you right up front that this would not be your typical how to write a grant proposal training. that we were going to get very tactical with lots of fabulous tools and fill in the blanks templates and great information about how to do it, but we were going to be doing it inside a much bigger paradigm. And do you remember that? I probably shocked you. I know I shocked several people that I heard from when I said right up front, let me be transparent about something. I want to tell you something about what's in my heart as I lead you, as I lead us forward on this journey. And that was that I'm a lot less interested in training people to write better grant proposals and a lot more excited about supporting and inspiring you as an individual to step into your full power as a catalyst for positive change, your full power as a catalyst for positive change in your work, in your life, and in the world, because the world needs people who have stepped into their full power as catalysts for positive change. And my return on investment is what you carry forward from this course, from your experiences inside this course, into the world, not only of your work and the impact that you can have through your grants work in the world, but in every other aspect of your life as well. So remember, we spent all of our time operating inside this three-dimensional perspective of tactical, on the ground, how do we make this happen? Elevating that to the relational, which is how do all the parts fit together and move around each other and with each other, all the way up to that ego view, that transcendent view that allows us to see from horizon to horizon and get a much bigger picture of what's really going on than we're able to when we're right down on the ground. And how important it is for us, not only as grant professionals and grant writers, but for 21st century human beings to be able to move freely from one level to another and back again. All right, there's no order of better or best to any of these. Each and every one of these levels is critically important in its own way at the right time. And so as 3D thinkers in the grants world, our ability to move among these three and use the skills and tools that are available to us becomes critical and essential to our success. So I have a series of questions that I'd like you to think about answering, and there's space in your workbook for doing exactly that. And you can either pause and take them one at a time, or simply let me share them with you here, and then you can come back on your own time at a later date. And they really aren't about the grants work at all, because in the end, I don't think this course was about the grants work entirely, for sure. More about what you've become in the process of this journey, what you've allowed to change and shift inside yourself through the inquiries that we've engaged in and through the hard challenges that we focused on in our skill building and the road that we've built together. There's a wonderful Sri Lankan saying that I often share, which is, we build the road and the road builds us. So we've traveled this journey together, and in traveling this journey together, we've been transformed. I've been transformed. I know in some way you have as well. And so this is really an opportunity to reflect on where that transformation might have happened for you. So the first question is, has anything shifted through this course in the way you think about yourself and your grants work? Has anything shifted through this course in the way you think about yourself and your grants work? And the second question, are you a grant writer? Are you a catalyst for positive change? Are you both? Or are you something else? Are you a grant writer? Are you a catalyst for positive change? Are you both? Are you something else? And finally, a very open question. What have you learned about seeing from a 3D perspective? What have you learned about seeing from a 3D perspective? That's the tactical on the ground, how to make it work, the relational, the way the elements move together and connect with each other, the transcendent, really rising up and seeing everything from that broader, big vision perspective. What have you learned about seeing from a 3D perspective? So, as we're getting ready to wrap up, we've got one more thing to take care of, and that's our just do it, putting it into action right away. This time, instead of asking you to come up with one quick win action and one high leverage action related to something you learned in this session, I'm going to tell you what your quick win and high leverage actions are for this session, and that is to take some time to answer this question. What's your game plan? What's your game plan for the next 3 months or for the next year for putting what you've learned through this course into action on behalf of your organization, on behalf of your community, on behalf of a cause that you care about, on behalf of yourself and your own life and your own vision for possibility inside your life? You've got a fill in the blanks form on page 191 that can spark you in thinking this through. And I just really want you to take the brakes off as you're thinking about this. Something that will really move you forward. What do you want to be moving toward? And then there's that all important question: what are you going to put in place to hold yourself accountable for your actions and your results? I cannot wait to see what you can create. I would be deeply honored if you would share with me, not just now what your game plan is, but 3 months from now or a year from now, what you've actually been able to create. I would love to be your partner in that way. And I am, from here on out, a card-carrying charter member of your Grants Success team. I am here to support your forward success at every step of the way. I want you to know that. And I want you to know that I believe with my whole heart that the what's next that's available to you is completely unlimited. Who said the sky is the limit? It is not. And that just really brings us to the end of everything that I'm able to share with you inside this course. I just want to thank you so much for every moment that we've spent together. I know it hasn't been in real time, but it's felt to me that it's been in real time. I have never sat down to record one of these sessions without feeling with all my heart that you are right there with me. And I'm so grateful to you for that experience on my own behalf. I hope that this has really supported you in many, many ways. I look so forward to continuing to work with you in the future. Please don't hesitate to call me if there's anything at all that I can do to help support your moving forward. I just want to thank you and wish you success in absolutely everything, and particularly great success and much happiness in your grant seeking.